Well, good morning and welcome to the case study. So here where we really want to get into challenges or problems that happen in our construction projects. Being able to take real world practical application and learn from some of our experts in order to be able to try to create a better learning opportunity for us so that we don't repeat the same issue or at least have some great foundation before we move into it. Today, you're going to love who my guest is. And so I am so excited to be able to welcome Donna Huntingdale, and she is here with Building RX. And so I really just want to thank her for being here. You know, she's not only an amazing executive powerhouse woman, but she's also a friend of mine. And so very grateful for you to be here. Thank you, Donna.
Be here. It's my pleasure.
So, Donna, we've had some contractors here on the case study and some owners' representatives, but would you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Well, so I graduated from Kansas State University with a degree in architectural engineering. Always loved math and science, and ended up in the engineering field and moved out to California doing structural engineering. Did structural engineering for 6 years and then got my license. So I'm a licensed civil engineer and just realized it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. I really enjoy the big picture. And I felt that the what I was doing within structural engineering was a little narrow for my liking. Um, Ended up going to Sutter Health as a project manager for their facilities planning and development department, and that was my foray into healthcare, all things project management, managing projects from $1 million equipment replacement project all the way up to having worked on the downtown project that was over 500 million in ultimate costs. And then ended up working for a small consulting firm, got a taste for being in a small company environment, and decided to start my own company. So started Building RX in 2011. Building RX was the name was as a result of having both a product line and a service line. I was doing sales for a water treatment product and a bacteria inhibiting surface application, as well as wanting to continue my project management. And so Building RX, prescribing building solutions, seemed to bridge that gap. And then realizing I am not a salesperson, I ended up just focusing, dropping the product side of things and solely focusing on project management.
Well, that's very interesting because I think that we recognize that God takes us down specific paths on purpose, and being able to have a broad, diverse knowledge of things that are used in the construction industry, as well as how to manage and administer a construction project, all really come into play. But I know one of the things I was always told as a young construction field engineer was that if you want to learn by fire hose and learn the most on any project that you possibly can and be able to get just a little bit of every discipline, make sure that you go into hospitals.
And so, yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah, I would include airports probably in that one now, but with all of the technology and the low voltage and all of the structural associated with some of those big heavy machines, X-ray machines that they use, I do think that that was good advice, but I only worked on one for a short period of time. Most of my other work was in the public, but how exciting to get that kind of a foundation to your career before starting off.
Oh my gosh, saying drinking from a fire hose is 100% accurate. Having come, like I said, from the engineering side, and then the whole field opening up, and needing to know how to manage budgets and schedules and RFPs, and be the owner's eyes and ears on the site, and knowing what the inspector's role is, what all the individuals' roles are, and making sure that all those tasks were being done as needed for the owner. Yeah, it was definitely. I tell people that I would wake up in the middle of the night. I just wake up in the middle of the night going, "Oh my God, I forgot to do X, Y, or Z." Or yeah,
I think that's a nightmare that many project managers have shared with you.
yes,
So,
yes.
well, very good. Well, that does all play into what we're talking about today. And so what we'd like to do is be able to identify a challenge that, probably is more common to the industry than people really recognize. I think many times we think that this is happening to me, this is on my project. But then when we talk to other people, we're like, oh, something similar happened to you also. So being able to talk about some of these things in this platform is helping students be able to understand how to better prepare for these particular types of situations. And so your broad, diverse of experience today is going to be talking about helping us set up a project, because I know that when we were visiting, we both have the belief that you start with the end in mind. And the way you start a project really defines how that project's energy and flow is going to remain throughout the rest of the project. So introduce us to this challenge today.
Alrighty. Well, definitely developing what that end is really the first step. I mean, like, you're really looking ahead to where do you want to be at the end of the project, and then working backwards, essentially. So I've had experiences where owners come in and they have this sense of urgency on maybe one particular task, that they're saying, we have to get this done as soon as possible. This is what the next step is. This is what we have to do. And then coming in and developing the big picture schedule of, how long is everything taking? What are the constraints to leading up to what they're saying is the first critical point. Finding out, for example, they thought we had to have a contractor on board by the testing and inspection company on board by January of that next year. And come to find out, like, that's not the next step. Like, we have all these other things that have to happen before you can get there. And so just let me put together your big picture, and figure out really where that falls. So, I mean, and honestly, it really, in addition to just laying out the project, it gives people peace of mind of, that you're not behind. Like, this is what we're doing. That these are the milestones. Just hang on. So developing that schedule.
Yeah, it's really so true, because I always laugh when I'm on, LinkedIn or any of the social media platforms and people are bad mouthing teachers, because I'm like, listen, I'm a professor, but you don't understand. Your job through life is educating other people. And a lot of times the owner doesn't really understand that process. And so you could tell them that process, but it's not going to be accepted as well. And so I know that it seems simplistic, but I love using the parent-child relationship, because if you tell your child to do something, they are specifically going to do the opposite. So if you teach them, educate and guide them, or have your, neighbor or best friend tell them, then you're likely to get a better result. And so I love that you're building out this master plan, this master program, by first identifying the vision of the end deliverable, what it is that they think that they want, and then creating these steps and in alignment to where we're going to start in order to be able to successfully get them moving on this schedule.
Exactly.
And so what is one of the first things that you're going to do when you start looking at building this schedule? We talked about an end goal and vision and making sure that that end deliverable is really clear. So is that done through like scope of work, your contract? How does your engineering background fit into that? And how do you just really nail that down?
Yeah, honestly, I generally work from what I have now, knowing if there's contracts that are executed and what the deliverables and associated timelines are from those contracts, and start to piece together that, knowing regulatory requirements for local, for state, for environmental compliance, for, in some cases, coastal commission, all the different regulatory agencies, and making sure all of those are represented within the schedule. And then ultimately piecing together to the end goal of, say it's first patient in a hospital, or it's occupancy within affordable housing development, which is also something that Building RX works on, is affordable housing. So what we work through there and then really kind of test it. I'm always making sure that the predecessors are set up within the base schedule so that when dates change, things automatically flow through the rest of the schedule to show the impacts to that end date, if it is something that's on the critical path that's changing. Yeah, so I think that's how I approach it. And I recently, I developed the Gantt chart accordingly, and I've recently been challenged with making sure that I can summarize the Gantt chart appropriately to the owner too, because going to the communications within your project team, an owner, for example, in a hospital, knows how to run a hospital, does not know how to read a Gantt chart necessarily. Yeah. And so like figuring out how you translate that Gantt chart into something that is meaningful to the client.
So you got me spurred again. I wonder what it would look like if you uploaded that into ChatGPT and asked it to summarize that for you for the owner.
That's what I need to do.
Yes, absolutely. And what you could do is also upload previous reports that you've done for that owner that they liked, so that ChatGPT can see the kind of platform or format that you want that summary to come back in. But we'll talk later. From this point, you sound like you're creating a budget or a schedule, a master schedule, from the eyes of an owner's representative.
Absolutely.
But you're not really building it. So what gives you the understanding of the means and methods and what's going to go into actually building this? And is this schedule that you're creating as this masterpiece and this key to this project going to be used as the baseline schedule that we're going to follow throughout the project?
Absolutely. And you're right in that, for example, when I'm creating a master schedule at the beginning, there are chunks of time that are not further broken down at the point of creating this initial schedule. So I have one line item for construction when I'm first starting this. I have one line item for design. I have, I mean, and there's, I don't want to oversimplify. I mean, there's multiple pieces of each of those, like different components of the project or different predecessors, get ready work, that would have a separate line item that has, so that I can have the correct predecessors. But those pieces definitely are placeholders, and they're always, I'm always working to make sure that they are realistic, but not overly, not under, not, like just trying to find that sweet spot of this is enough time and it's also not too much time. Like just really trying to find that sweet spot, knowing that each of those lines will be expanded as the project goes on, and more input is obtained. We get the general contractor on board, they create the whole schedule, validate the total duration that I had allocated for construction, making sure I'm not shortening that, because that's not good for the project either. So yeah,
so really, essentially, it's no different than what we do when we're putting a budget estimate together for the estimated cost of a project. You're just putting together the estimated time, and then we're going to have a contractor come in with collaboration of their subcontractors and build a more detailed schedule that's going to have more line item tasks associated with it. Okay.
Correct.
And then predecessor, successor, just for those who aren't familiar, the predecessor are going to be those activities that really kind of need to take shape in order for the next following activity to start or to take off. And then successor is going to be those tasks that happen after that. So when we're looking at this and, we're saying, well, this is great. I mean, this makes so much sense. So why don't we do this all the time? And so it's a challenge that you're bringing up to us today, because I'm assuming that, I don't know, maybe it doesn't happen all the time, or is it just that it doesn't happen the way that you want it to happen? So tell me more about that.
I think it's, I have oftentimes gotten the feedback from a contractor, look, I got to get a schedule. And the comment of, we're just not ready yet. We're not ready to make a schedule. When that, in my mind, is the very first thing. Like, you have to make a schedule to know where you're going. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be the first step, because otherwise you're dealing with exactly what I was describing earlier, where people are not understanding what needs to happen before what, and just chaos and confusion. So, and I have to admit, like, I've been in that mindset too. For example, a project that I'm working on now, when we first started it, and kicking it off and not feeling, well, we just don't quite have enough information yet. Like, I don't know if I should be doing a schedule yet, but I mean, it is the place to start. Like, it is where I start a project, is creating the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, it's a map, right? I mean,
exactly.
there's many different ways to be able to get to the one point, but leaving it up to the contractor, again, means and methods, they're the ones that are steering the ship or the boat or the whatever you're driving, So I 100% agree. And I think that where it usually gets stuck for me is when you try to really nail down those detailed tasks and somebody's like, well, I don't know what date I'm going to be in there, because I don't know when the plumber's going to be finished. And it's about, look, I don't care what date, I'm just asking you how long it's going to take to do that scope of work. And then
what are the predecessors to you? Like, what needs to be in place for you to start?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that we can define, we're working through our schedule right now with a contractor, and, trying to get all the medical equipment defined. Like, when do we need the contractor installed items to be delivered to site, such that we're not holding you up. They're owner furnished items. So we want to make sure that we are on it, so that there's no cause that or no hand that we have in delaying a project. And then, when is the room ready to hand over to the X-ray equipment installer? So figuring out all those, like what needs to be in place, all the finishes need to be in place, to all the, does the ceiling need to be in? Does the ceiling need to be open? So all those questions have to be asked as we're diving into those one line, at the beginning, having created the one line item that is construction, as that is expanded by the contractor, really deep diving into every single detail like that.
Yeah, and it makes sense that this can end up being a tool for everyone on the job site, right? So it's also a tool for the contractor. And I also identify what you say of doing this budget time frame, this budget schedule, that you can identify milestones that can be linked into the contract so that we have certain scopes of work that we want done during specific time frames. But you also said something that is the reason why I know this all goes south. And that is that you said, because we don't want to be blamed for the delay. And I think that as soon as somebody tries to put something down on paper that is going to tie or commit them to an actual date, that's when it starts getting really scary. Because when you have an owner who doesn't understand the construction process and they see a date slip and they don't understand that the contractor has mechanisms to be able to accelerate work or catch up or replace order of precedence somewhere, that's when it really kind of starts causing that conflict and frustration and tension on a job site. And so we know always that communication is going to be one of those key aspects, along with education, in order to be able to keep your projects moving smoothly with these master plan schedules.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, fantastic. So we've identified that we want to start with the end in mind, and we want to do so by creating large tasks. Those are usually referred to as milestones. And then within those milestones, we're going to put assemblies and put our individual task items and link those all together with predecessors and successors. We're going to have this budget schedule duration put together. We're going to have collaboration from contractors and their subcontractors to start identifying and drilling down more detail. And being able to have all of this is going to communicate and collaborate for the owner so that we can have a beautiful project that runs smoothly. So how do you take this master plan project, go and do a deeper dive and put it into a detailed project, and then tie it back to your budget and estimate?
Yeah. Immediately when I'm starting a project, the schedule is always first. And then budget is the very next thing. So putting together, there oftentimes are contracts that have been executed before I get involved. But there are also times that there is an absolute blank slate. And so if there are contracts, getting those plugged in, we already know that those are commitments that have been made by the owner and associated project. And if not, if there is unit cost estimates that can be made. I learned at the very beginning when I first started at Sutter Health the criticality of having line items on your budget that it's totally psychological, but if you have a dollar amount associated with something, any dollar amount, it's much easier to manage the overall budget than having missed complete scopes within your budget. So like line iteming everything that I know are costs to the project and assigning a cost to it and making sure that you have appropriate contingencies for the overall project, and then reduce, knowing that those contingencies are going to be allocated as costs get more refined, and ultimately can be reduced as more refinement comes to the project.
Yeah, I feel like that's really important. The schedule of values, literally, I live off of that. And it is amazing how many contractors try to manipulate it in a way to front load in order to be able to have more capital to work on their projects to begin with. And it is it's kind of a fight. I'd rather have the fight in the creation and acceptance of the submitted schedule of values than during the project trying to debate over the cost of one particular item. But we're about halfway through, so I just want to make sure that everyone knows that they're on LinkedIn. You can put your questions in the comment box if you have any questions for Donna for us to ask her while we have her captivated attention. But Donna, you've actually come up with a software to help manage this process and the coordination between schedule and budget. So can you tell us a little bit about it and how it could possibly help others in being able to have great management of their projects?
So when I have, so I am very particular about how I manage my budgets. And I also want to clarify that as an owner's rep within the healthcare sector, I am managing beyond the schedule of values by the contractor. I'm managing all the different consultants and their associated contracts. So I've got the architect's fees and reimbursables. I've got the CEQA consultant contract. I've got all the medical equipment. I've got managing all those costs and associated purchase orders. So there's all these line items that construction is one line item on my budget because I'm managing from a higher level and referring to the contractor's budget and schedule of values to allocate to that one line item on my budget.
So actually, Donna, before you go into that any further, I just want to sit on that for a second, because this is probably one of the most missed collaborations in all of construction for all owners and construction companies. And it happens within the construction company itself as well, because you have a head and office department that's doing the finances of the actual company. And then you have this singular budgeted amount for this project that's being managed on the job site. And then you have these bonds that have to be sold, or, certain funding that has to be found at specific times for the owner or the client. And so this baton twirling of getting all of these budgets to align at the same time to make sure the contractor gets his pay at the end of the 30 days, it's really, really tough. Yeah. And sometimes people just really don't recognize how many different fingers are in this pot and how that all works. And so I appreciate you identifying and mentioning that on the owner side, I mean, literally you have, the management of what it's going to cost for lunch to bring everybody in the room so you can talk about the scope of work that they want in the workflow at the end users of this particular end deliverable. And being able to manage that along with their operating budget of operating a hospital, and then, identifying that. So I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just want to make sure everyone knows that this happens on every single project. This isn't just hospital projects. This happens on your little school project, your summer school project, where the school district is trying to do the exact same thing that you're talking about. So.
Right. Well, and like you're referencing, there's so many times that the projects are funded from different sources, and so not just tracking the total cost, but tracking what portion of that cost is being paid from which funding source. So there's what I found was that it was there wasn't anything with my particularness of managing a budget. There wasn't anything that served all those needs. And so when I am, so let me describe some of those needs. So when I create a budget, I'm creating the budget, and I view that as one component of what needs to be tracked. The next component are what are the committed costs and what has been committed or is expected to be committed. And so those are the contracts and the either the invoices against the contracts or SEP invoices that are just one-offs against the budget. So being able to enter those contracts and have indicators, obviously they need to, each of those line items within a budget has to be maintained. So you've got the budget and you can't have your committed costs exceed that budget. And so having some flag if you get to a point where you're entering a contract or an invoice that exceeds the budget, you're going to have to pull up some contingency to cover that. You have to get the approval and then pull up the contingency to cover that. So just allowing for those pending costs to be entered, being able to get approval on those pending costs, move them to committed costs, and have the budget respond to that as needed. So those are the committed costs. And then the last portion are what's been paid from those committed costs. And so dollars out the door is what I call it. And tracking those dollars against the contract, making sure the contract, just as the budget can't be exceeded by those committed costs, the committed costs or contracts can't be exceeded by the invoicing against them. So making sure that all those if-thens are incorporated into your budget tracking was very manual for me. And before having created the software that you referenced, having had created the software that you referenced. So embarrassingly enough, I was managing $80 million projects on spreadsheets. And I knew exactly how I managed my budget, but it was not scalable. I mean, like to teach someone that, believe me, I had tried, is very, very challenging. And so I worked with a developer to have the if-thens worked into the database entry program that, when the contract exceeds the budget, there's a pop-up that says, do you want, there's not enough budget. Do you want to use contingency? And so it creates a contingency line item that draws the money up from the contingency bucket to the line item that where it's needed. So yeah. So that's
who's responsible for the input of data into this? Is this a shared responsibility between owner and contractor, or who's doing it?
That's a very good question. So at the moment, it is BuildingRx putting in the contracts and the invoices, but there is thought on further versions of whether, maybe the consultants are putting their own invoices in. And then it's just a matter of going through a workflow for approval. But right now it is BuildingRx putting that data in. But like I was saying, the previous way of doing things with my spreadsheet, there was no way even to have that done as just data entry, because it was so complicated of, sometimes I'll change the committed costs when I put the money in the cost to date, but sometimes I don't. And then, so it was unteachable. And so, so now with the software, I'm able to have anyone enter a contract, enter an invoice, and all the if-thens are in the software to get the numbers adjusted.
Well, thank you. I think that this is a really important point. I believe that there is a new position that is going to be generated out of artificial um, I used to be in animal science, so AI stands for something totally different than it does artificial intelligence. So I almost always mess that one up. But anyways, um, because data collection and the way that it's collected is going to be so absolutely critical for the output of the information. And so really understanding coding and really understanding the where that cost needs to be put in is going to be really important. And I think that, putting this on a project manager that's sitting out on a job site who's trying to manage the physical construction of what's going on out there and administrate and facilitate information to all parties to collaborate and coordinate, having them wear another hat for the finance part of it and keep track of the data and all of that, and knowing how accurate it needs to be in order to be able to keep everybody running smoothly. I think it's too much to ask. So I think that this data strategist or this innovation specialist is going to be a really important piece for construction companies who want to evolve into the modern construction industry. So thank you so much for being on today. I just want to do a quick recap. So we talked about the challenge, which is making sure that you have a schedule that everybody is on board with, and recognizing that that schedule is going to have phases, milestones, assemblies, all with the end in mind, so that you can align from commencement to completion all of the tasks with the proper order of precedence, having the predecessors and successors, and then being able to tie that back to a budget so that you have money to be able to complete those tasks at the end of the schedule when you're getting ready to wrap up your project. So we talked about the complexity of that and being able to collaborate and coordinate with contractors so that we can address their means and methods and how they're going to do things within those duration timeframes that you've identified. So you've created this software in order to try to nip this challenge and try to create some fluency for your owners in this. Is there anything else that you would like to add that just would help a student or someone in the industry wanting to set up a really, really great project from the very beginning? Are there any tips that you would like to leave us with?
So there's a third leg to that stool, which connects the budget and schedule, which is the cash flow. So that's the third thing that I think needs to be referenced for completeness, is linking that schedule with the budget so that the owner has an idea of when dollars are going to be needed. At what time each chunk of change is going to be needed in order to accommodate the project. So putting that last bit on there, but also, really taking from the very beginning, taking it very seriously on building your team. I think that that is the other very important component as you're starting a project, is being very mindful of team dynamics, team communication, personalities, understanding and appreciating all the different personalities that you have on a project. I think that is so key, and as your eye is on the prize of getting to the end of the project, I think it's oftentimes easy to brush under the rug. Mm-hmm. And so I think that really being mindful of setting up your team dynamics and getting to know each other, and understanding everyone's strengths and weaknesses, and supporting each other with those using your strengths to support others' weaknesses, I think is very key to a successful project.
Yeah, I 100% would agree. I know that you and I work in partnership on something called We Build Women and Women Build Women. And just recognizing that this really was your brainchild and that I'm just the introvert that gets to support everything that comes in.
No.
But you pulled me out of my shell on it, and I really appreciate it because I do, in the soloness of my entrepreneurship, I miss the connection with women. And so it's nice to be able to have someone like you who kind of paves that way to allow me to be able to still be myself, but participate in those things. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about that group that you and I've been able to really see some traction on here lately in the Sacramento area?
Yeah, definitely. And don't undersell. We couldn't do the whole thing could not exist without you. So don't undersell yourself for sure. But the whole concept of We Build Women is trying to define a path or provide opportunities for a path that students have, job seekers have to develop a network. So we have just, goes without saying, there's so many amazing um, people in the industry that want to help people enter into the industry. And, there is, uh, it's nice for students and job seekers to be able to see other women in the industry in positions of um, uh, influence and smart and impactful and just amazing women in the industry, and for the uh, students and people coming up in the industry to have access to not just the visual of that, but to make connections and to really start to develop that network and have that as they expand within the industry. So that's the whole idea, is to just make connections for people entering the industry. I did not put enough emphasis on that in my early career, and I think that I just wanted to open that door for people and show them the impact that having that network can have on your career.
Yes, I appreciate it. And we've had some really great sponsors and hosts that have participated in supporting this effort, and always recognizing that us being able to educate men and how important they are in supporting women in the construction industry. And obviously, knowing the truth that women are going to be those innovative creators that the modern construction industry really needs. And so your construction company is going to need women more than ever. So we're super excited about it. Our next event actually is going to be January 27th. And so we hope to see everyone there. So Donna, thank you again so much for being here today. We talked about the master plan and how important it is. We created an opportunity to take that schedule and tie it back into the budget. And then we identified communication and collaboration, and also being able to understand things like procurement schedule and its inclusion, and then the different release of funding for the project, which again is information that sometimes people out on site just aren't aware of what is happening behind the curtain. And so I thank you so much for being here today. Can you tell everyone where they can find you?
So I can be found at building-rx.com, or email is donna@building-rx.com. Happy to be a resource for students as they're coming up into the field, and happy to answer any questions about what we presented here or any other challenges that you may be having, within your projects.
All right. Well, thank you again so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I just want to remind everybody that if you're looking for resources for your company, we have the Skill Builder, which is a monthly membership where you can get a hold of a library of resources of mini courses for you to be able to learn anything that you might not find in a textbook. And then we also want to let you know about the Executive Edge, which is a 2-part series on providing leadership and mindset training for executive professionals. And so really excited to be able to releasing this in February. Thank you again, everyone, so much for being here. And we hope to see you next Friday.
Thank you, Corey.